This is ADHD Rewired. This is the show designed to help those of us who have really good intentions and a slightly wandering attention. Whether you have ADHD and you want to learn more about it, or you are looking for ways to organize your time, your things, or the many details of life so you can get more done, this show is for you. My name is Eric Tivers. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, coach, and consultant. And, oh yeah, I have ADHD. Okay, welcome to episode number 2. I am recording this on February 13th. So, when I was thinking about what do I want episode number 2 to be about, I have a number of different ideas that I have mapped out already. And you know, one of the things that I want to be really clear with on this show is I want to be very authentic and very transparent with my own ADHD. One of the behaviors that I often struggle with, one of the things that I often struggle with, which is very common in ADHD, is sleep. For the amount of effort and attention that I put into trying to get good sleep and maintain healthy sleep behaviors and sleep hygiene, I seem to not make the traction that I look for or make the progress that I'm looking for when it comes to sleep. That being said, over the past year, I've made huge improvements. And whenever I'm having a week like I am this week, where I'm not doing so hot on my sleep goals, you know, I do things like I'm doing right now, where I'm kind of losing my train of thought. One of the things that I kind of get down on myself on is, why am I not making progress on this goal? And the thing is, I have made a lot of progress on this goal. I used to go to bed on average somewhere between 11:30 was a good night. I often would go to bed between 1 and 2. And over the past year or so, really the past year, I have gotten that to, I'm going to bed between 10:30 to 11 on most nights. However, this week has not been one of those weeks. I've been using a lot of strategies, and, to be honest, I have not been successful with my strategies. I have all kinds of unique alarms that work for me sometimes, but I've been ignoring a lot of those alarms, and it's frustrating. So when I was thinking about what should I record episode 2, what should it be about, I figured, you know what, let me talk about sleep. Because sleep is the one thing that I get frustrated because I have such a hard time really achieving the goals that I'm looking for. So there's a couple areas that I want to talk about with sleep. When we talk about sleep, we want to be thinking about sleep hygiene. What are the things that are good for us that take care of us with sleep? And it's got to be regular and routine. Now, I'm not going to talk a lot about sleep disorders on this podcast, only because I just don't know enough about them. All I know is that I highly recommend people with ADHD, at least if they have any question about, how they sleep, seek out a sleep study to at least rule out the possibility of an underlying sleep disorder. One of the things that can look a lot like ADHD and turn out to not be ADHD are sleep disorders like sleep apnea. Now, I also know that these things can also go together. One of my friends who I met several years ago going to the National CHAD conferences, Roberto Olivardia, who's an ADHD specialist he teaches at Harvard. He has ADHD and very severe sleep apnea, and he talks about this and lectures about this at conferences. So you can have both, but it's absolutely worth looking into and exploring. I had a sleep study probably about 6 or 8 months ago, and I was really hopeful, and in one sense that I did have a sleep disorder, because if I did end up having a sleep disorder, then I may be able to get treatment for that sleep disorder, which may ultimately improve my ADHD symptoms. It turns out I don't have a sleep disorder. Apparently, the clinic that I went to said that I slept quite well, although it did not feel like it at this place. But it's worth exploring just to see, because if there is an underlying sleep disorder and that could be treated medically, that could either, one, improve your ADHD symptoms, or two, potentially turn out that it's not ADHD after all. And while, that's probably unlikely, there is a chance and it is worth looking into. We do know that ADHD and sleep disorders often coexist. I have yet to meet someone with ADHD who doesn't report some kind of sleep difficulty. So I think that's something to really explore. And I was kind of surprised that in the new DSM that is out with the new diagnostic criteria, that sleep wasn't really addressed in there. So sleep is an underlying issue, and you should absolutely be looking at any of the medical rule-outs to determine whether or not your ADHD symptoms could be improved by addressing an underlying sleep disorder. So what we're going to be looking at today is some of the things and some of the areas where sleep issues can occur. I'm going to first start talking about where my sleep issues occur. And that is getting myself to get into bed. It's amazing how many things that really aren't important I suddenly feel are important when it's later in the evening. It's always that issue of one more thing. At the top of the podcast, I was talking about how this week I've really been struggling with getting myself to get to bed at the time that I want to. And so one of the issues that I'm having is getting myself to leave my office at the time that I want to. So my goal is to be home by 9 p.m. each night. And I haven't even come close to that at all this week. It's Thursday, and I think on average I've gotten home from Monday through Thursday, I've gotten home between 11 and I think the latest night was 12:30, which, it just makes my next day so much more difficult. A few years ago, I was really kind of interested in exploring how much does my sleep actually affect my ADHD symptoms, or more explicitly, my executive functions. So I took a log. I kept a sleep log for about 45 days, and I rated a few different specific components of executive functioning. One was getting started on task or task initiation. The other one was task shifting. And I don't remember what the third one was. I'm sure you can all relate to that. But what I found is that when I got less than 6 hours of sleep in one night, that my symptoms that I was really monitoring and really rating on myself were impaired for the next 3 days. So it really showed me that sleep really does impact how I am doing and how my performance is. Because, it's one thing to know the skills and learn the skills, which is incredibly important. And for some of you listening, that might be why you're here. But the other part of it is, and where I get frustrated is I know what to do, but I have a hard time executing. So I have an app that I use. I'm a big fan of apps, and I'm going to talk a lot about different apps and tools and technology on the show that really help with ADHD. But one that I am using is called, I have it written down because I keep forgetting the name of it. I think Freaky Alarm. And what Freaky Alarm does, a couple things. One, it utilizes this concept and I talked about this last time, the concept of a point of performance. It's being at the place where that behavior needs to occur in order to perform the desired behavior. So what this alarm does is it will go off, and it will go off every minute when you set it. And some of the cool things about this alarm and the way I use it is when I walk into my house, I have a little bookshelf that has some cookbooks right in my front door. And the cookbook that I have, that's kind of on the book end, if you will, has a UPC code. And I can scan that UPC code as the thing that I need to scan to shut off the alarm. So I have to be there at the place, at home, in order to shut the alarm off. So, and then there's also a component to this app where you have to also answer math problems, which for me is extraordinarily frustrating because even the easy-ish math problems are not easy, especially when there are different sounds with the app going off. sometimes this works, but this week it's not been successful for me, and I've been ignoring it. Now, one of the things that I do like about this app is that it gives you, it's called an eye wake coefficient, and this eye wake coefficient actually gives you some really cool data on yourself that tells you how quickly you were in responding to this app or to the alarm. It's one tool in my tool belt, but right now it's not working for me. One of the reasons is I have a lot of things that I'm working on, like getting this podcast launched. While I'm recording this, nothing is on iTunes yet. So I'm trying to get a number of episodes recorded before I even launch. And I have a bunch of other projects that I'm working on right now, which are fun and interesting to me. I'm having a hard time kind of stopping my brain and winding down in the evening. So, one of the things that can be really helpful for winding down is really thinking about kind of setting the mood. And there's a number of things that you can do, and you have to kind of know yourself. One of the things that I like to do is make sure that my lights are kind of dim, and I'm doing something that's not going to kind of suck me into the wormhole of time, especially doing things online, checking email. I try to do things that are not something that has no end. So, one of the things that I actually really enjoy doing is drinking a cup of sleepy time tea. I just find it very relaxing and very soothing. And it has, some magic in it that I think, makes me a little bit more sleepy. One of the other things I also do is I have an alarm set in my phone. And this week I've been very good at ignoring this alarm. But the alarm that I have on my phone is to take melatonin. I started taking melatonin about a year ago. I find it to be very helpful. I think I get more restful sleep, and it actually gets me to the point where I want to get into bed. So I find that melatonin is helpful. I take a 5 milligram dose. I'm not making any recommendation, though, for what you should take if you're thinking about it. Talk to your doctor, talk to your pharmacist. So that is kind of my cover my own behind about not recommending any specific medical supplements or anything of that nature. But melatonin is something that our brain actually produces. And one of the things to understand about our brain and understand about melatonin is that, in the terms of evolution, all of these screens and electronic lights really came into existence about a second ago in the terms of evolution. When we see lights, our brain stops producing melatonin. And when it's dark, our brain kicks in the production of melatonin. And the reason for that from an evolutionary standpoint is that our brain is supposed to be in the mindset of it's time to work when it's receiving light. And when it's not, it's supposed to be in the mindset of wind down and sleep. So, but all around us, we have, our smartphones, these big TVs, so we're being bombarded by this stimuli that's actually stopping the production of melatonin. So one of the things that I highly recommend is to, turn off all screens, somewhere between 60 to 90 minutes before you're going to bed. Now, I know that a lot of you listening to this will probably say, yes, sounds good, but not happening. So if that's the case, and I will occasionally put myself into that same camp, here's what I do. I turn the setting to the lowest possible brightness in order for me to still see it as possible. So I find that to be helpful. So let's see, what else? With winding down, setting the mood, turning the lights down, and really just set up the sleep environment to be conducive. One of the things you also want to think about is what are the things you need to do before you get ready for bed? Getting ready for bed requires a lot of executive functioning because there's a lot of sequencing of things that you need to do. There's one, stopping what you're already doing. That's where I've been having a hard time this week is stopping the projects that I'm working on at work. That's often been my most challenging one is putting on the brakes. So first you have to stop, which requires attention shifting. And then you have to go get ready for bed. And what does that involve? So that might mean, washing your face, brushing your teeth, taking any medication that you might have, turning everything off. So there's a lot of components to it. And anything that you can do to really kind of make it a routine so you're not having to think about what should I do first, what should I do next? Because anytime you have to make those decisions, you're using your executive function of prioritization and sequencing. And the more you can make that more routine, the less is going to be dependent on your executive function system of your brain, which at later in the evening isn't going to be working so well. One of the reasons is, and I believe that this is one of the reasons for me, is that my meds have long worn off by the time I am getting ready for bed. So it's really, it's a lot more challenging. Let me tell you about a strategy that I do use to get myself to bed, and I think I need to start using this again. This is something that I call the unalarm clock game. The way you play this game, it requires at least one other player, and they have to be a member of your family, and they don't have to be a willing participant, but you do have to really like them. And here's how this works. So if you know that you always go to bed right after you brush your teeth, and you're really good at after you brush your teeth, you get right into bed, put an alarm clock in the bathroom where you brush your teeth. Oh, the other part of this is that the person that you care about, maybe it's your spouse, maybe it's your kid, a roommate, you have to like them, and they have to be asleep before you. Because the idea is you're going to set an alarm that you have to get to before the alarm goes off. Okay. Now, so I did this for about 2 or 3 years. And in the 3 years or so that I did this, it went off about 3 times. And 2 of the times, luckily, did not wake my wife or son. So, but I find it to be a very good strategy because for me, it kind of gives you just a tiny bit of necessary kind of adrenaline when you realize that, oh no, I have to stop what I'm doing before, this alarm wakes my family. And it helps me stop, put on the brakes and get to that alarm. Now, if I'm in the middle of doing something and I'm not at a stopping point to it, and I realize, oh man, I have to run upstairs so I make sure that the alarm doesn't go off and wake anybody, what I will do is I'll push the alarm back maybe 5 or 10 minutes. All right. So I'm still accountable to come back to that place. Okay. So that's my point of performance is being in the bathroom, so I can get ready for bed and then I go to sleep. I never, even when I keep pushing the time back, I still have to keep checking in with it. So even when I'm not responding to it the first time, I still find it to be a successful strategy when I use it. It's like all these great strategies. They can sometimes, maybe even often work, but they never work when you don't use them. So that's probably one that I'm going to be going back to. So, those are a couple ideas that I have for you for getting yourself to get into bed. What about getting in bed and you're laying there and your thoughts are racing? This is another issue that I have where I have, 1,000 thoughts all at the same time. So one of the things that I do is I find it very helpful to listen to something. I listen to different podcasts that I set for somewhere between 45 minutes to an hour because I need to make sure it's long enough that I'll fall asleep during it. Because if I don't fall asleep during it and the episode that I'm listening to ends before I fall asleep, then I want to listen to something else. Then I have to look at my screen again and the screen can be bright, even if I have it at the darkest setting. And I may have been very, very close to falling asleep. So I have to make sure that it's long enough. I also have to make sure that it's, interesting enough that I want to listen to it, but not so interesting that it's going to keep me awake. So I wouldn't recommend listening to this show when you go to sleep because it's going to be so interesting. But there are, there's so many different podcasts out there that are good. One of the things that I do for shows that I like, but it's really just, things to think about, but nothing that I'm really wanting to take action on, is I'll start it 15 minutes forward from the time that I started it the night before. So I kind of keep rewinding it a bit. So I'm kind of hearing it over chunks, and I found that to be really helpful. So now let's say you share a bed with somebody, and this could wake the person you're sharing a bed with. There's something that I use that I absolutely love, and I've been using them for about 3 years, and that's a product called Sleep Phones. Their tagline is pajamas for your ears. So it's a fleece headband that has little headphones inside of this headband that you can't even really feel. So it's comfortable to sleep in. And I use that. I've had 3 pairs already. I absolutely love them. I can't recommend them more. If you go over to my website, ADHD Rewired, and click on the podcast link and look for the show notes for episode number 2, I will have a link for Sleep Phones right there. It will take you to their website, and I am an affiliate with them, so it doesn't cost you anything extra, and it gives me a little bit of extra pennies in my bank. So thank you. They also have a product called Run Phones, which is the same idea, same design, but the material is designed to be comfortable for running. So that's Sleep Phones, and you can find the link on my website. I recently have been experimenting with taking power naps. Now, not a 3-hour nap, but like a 20-minute nap where, you're not fully sleeping, but your mind is resting and your body is kind of recovering. And I've been really surprised at how recharging taking a 20 to up to 30 minutes of a nap can really be. One of the most frustrating things with ADHD is the inconsistency of behavior. And, I sometimes think about this fact that why is it that sometimes I can be so productive and get so much done, and at other times I can work so hard and feel like I'm doing nothing. And it can be just take an extraordinary amount of effort to accomplish, very few things. And what I realized, the underlying component of consistency I found is my energy level. And I was listening to another podcast. I think it was by Michael Hyatt. This Is Your Life. It's a good motivational kind of podcast. I recommend listening to it. And one of the things that he said in this, and I was listening to this while I was taking a shower, and it was one of the few times I actually turned the shower off to write something down, because for some reason it clicked with me, because I've been really focusing on experimenting with my sleep. I was the beginning stages of trying to get myself to wake up much earlier, because I was trying to shift my sleep time or my wake time to wake up earlier, because I found 2 things. One, on the occasion that I did wake up earlier, I felt like I was in less of a brain fog, and I felt my brain was functioning sooner when I woke up earlier. Then the other thing is that, I really need that kind of quiet alone time, and I was getting that at night. But the problem with that is that, my meds have worn off, and so I just keep going on my quiet alone time, and then I get to bed too late. So I was experimenting with shifting it to the morning. So while I'm really putting some attention to this and making some good progress with this, I heard on this podcast this idea that productivity is not about time management, it's about energy management. And for me, at that point in time, that just kind of clicked and it registered. And so now I even have saved on my lock screen on my iPad that time management is about energy management. And so that's really helping me think about my sleep hygiene, and how important it is to get sleep, because that's helping me get more done. I know I am 1,000 times more productive, just effective of a person when I'm getting the amount of sleep that I actually need. So this has been the one area of my life that I really do struggle in. And that's why I wanted to share this with you. As a clinical social worker, I'm in private practice. I specialize in ADHD and autism, but this is about ADHD. So I really have I would say mastered a lot of the challenges that I have. And for the most part, I'm pretty consistent with most things. Sleep, though, is the one thing that I still have such a hard time really gaining traction on. Yes, over the course of this past year, I've made a lot of progress on it, but still it's not to where I want to be, because it really is true that being more productive has to do with managing your energy. So what are some ways to manage energy? Well, obviously it's getting consistent sleep. I know what to do, but I'm not always doing what I know. But what are some ways to do that? One of the things that I do consistently is exercise. And I found that really, really helps. And I will definitely be having a future episode about exercise. And if you're not currently in an exercise routine, I want to talk about how to start habitual behaviors so they become a habit, so they become part of your routine. And it begins with the mindset that if you want to make big progress, you got to take really small steps. And getting back to where I was, which I think this is on the second time during the show so far on this episode that I've lost my train of thought. I'm using a mind mapping app that I use to kind of plot out my ideas. And I'm kind of thinking that this is a great way to plot out my ideas. But I think for the next episode, I'm going to go ahead and export that to an outline because I do want to talk in a linear fashion sequentially, even though my ideas don't flow sequentially. And I'll definitely be talking about mind mapping too at another episode. I talked about sleep phones. Oh, here's another strategy. And I think I'm going to actually use this one tonight. I'm going to call my wife and I'm going to ask her to stay on the phone with me until I leave my office. I have used that before. The problem is that she often goes to bed around the time that I would be getting home. So that makes her sleep time a little bit later. Another area to look at is the side effects of medication. Sometimes you need to cut back on the time of day that you're taking your dosage. Sometimes for some people, taking a small amount of your stimulant medication at night, half an hour or so before bed, can also actually give you enough focus to get yourself in bed. And again, I want to really reiterate here, I'm not giving any kind of advice for medication. This is something that I would highly encourage you, one, to talk to your doctor about, but two, also get online and look for the research that talks about this stuff. Okay, so you can bring that to your doctor because, unfortunately, a lot of doctors aren't experts in ADHD. So if your doctor is in the majority of those doctors who are not experts in ADHD, really look for sleep and sleep issues with ADHD and medication because there are articles out there that talk about this. So that is really, I think, all I have for sleep today. Hopefully tonight I will get home by 9 p.m. I'm going to let you know on the next podcast if I met my goal tonight. One of my goals of this podcast too is to demonstrate the value and power of accountability. And so now I kind of put it out there into the world that my intention is to leave my office and be home no later than 9 p.m. And I will check in with you next week to let you know how I did. Well, podcast listeners, you have just listened to the second episode of ADHD Rewired. I'd love to hear from you. Do you have a question or ADHD-related challenge? You can contact me through my website, ADHDrewired.com, and click on podcast. Email me your questions or call me and leave a message. I will answer your questions and share your ADHD stories, strategies, and struggles on upcoming episodes. Please help ADHD Rewired jump to new and noteworthy on iTunes faster than I can spot a squirrel off my Adderall by going to iTunes and giving ADHD Rewired a review and a 5-star rating. This will help ADHD Rewired turn into a nice shiny object at the top of iTunes, making it much easier for others with ADHD to find. I know what it's like to have really good intentions, so why don't you try this so you don't forget? Add to my calendar, tomorrow at noon, leave a 5-star review for ADHD Rewired.
Okay, I can create your meeting. Note that you already have 5 appointments that overlap with this. Shall I schedule it anyway?
Should we talk about overcommitment soon?
Interesting question, Eric.
So I just finished post-production. It's 9:20. Siri, I need to go home now.
Getting directions to Eric Tivers' home.
You have been listening to Eric Tivers. I hope you you enjoyed this episode of ADHD Rewired, reminding you to stop trying harder, start trying differently.